All right, so we'll begin, and let me just find my place here. For everyone's just joining us, welcome. This is just an amazing thing. Every time we do this, and we do our monthly, amazed that it even works. You know, I'm an ex-techie, and I don't actually understand everything that goes into computer systems anymore, but it's so complex to make any of this even work. And here we are from all parts of the world signing in. By the way, I'm recording this part of the meeting. It's just the introduction and the meditation. I'll turn off the recording once we get past the meditation because we wanted to make sure people feel comfortable sharing and knowing it's not going to be recording for everybody else to see. We just have it between us. And as I was thinking about the theme for today, one of our graduates wrote to me saying she was having some trouble with the non-judgmental part of loving kindness, and she's really not alone there. And I sometimes fall into the same thing. How do you show? She asked, how do you show compassion for someone who's done harmful things or someone's doing harmful things? It's one thing to feel loving kindness for your friends and family, or even people that you don't know. That's possible to do. You can imagine how that works. But does it even make sense to feel loving kindness for someone who's done or is doing great harm? And that's really a difficult question for many people. Because what you may find is all you really want to do is make them pay for what they've done or they're doing, or have them stop. When Lauren asked me what the topic for today was going to be, I said, well, it could be finding loving kindness in your heart for people who don't deserve it. Found a really wonderful podcast that Jack Kornfield did with Dan Harris of 10% Happier last year. And he says it really better than I can, so I'm going to have most of the introduction be this Jack Kornfield video. And it's a longer, the audio, it's audio, so your video will just show an audio stream going and no faces. And it's an hour long, the whole thing, and I'm going to share just part of it, so it's about halfway through. And by the way, if you ever want to find the link to the things I put up in these meetings, I'll always put them in Zoom-notes in our website. I'm going to put it in chat now so you can find it. Also have our notes for the small groups when we start. So I'm going to get this set up and see if I can do this.
We use love for so many things. I want you, I need you. You can listen to rock and roll and you get love in all kinds of flavors. So it's an enormous word that encompasses all these things of our desire for, our connection to, and so forth. I'm using a subset of that enormous word, maybe something closer to the bone, really essential. And we could almost find a different word for it to say that we are nothing and we're connected to everything. And in that you could call that connection by whatever word you like. I call it love, that ability to feel that you are part of something, not just this separate self, which is an illusion. Every breath you take was breathed by the people around you and the animals, and, the planet is breathing you. The sense of separateness is a fiction, and it's one of the great sufferings of our time now, because whether it's climate change or pandemic or economic racism and injustice, they all come from this small sense of separateness that doesn't recognize that who we are is this web of life. And when we get quiet and feel that connection is true, every breath teaches us that, you could call it whatever name you like.
When I think about love in the meditative or contemplative sense, I think about it as at least two things. One, just what you described, that when you are turning down the volume on, solipsistic storytelling, that's the ego's job. But if you can turn down the volume on that a little bit and get beneath it, you do feel more connected. I always talk about the I don't even know if this is true, but I've heard that the Tibetan phrase for enlightenment roughly translates to clearing away and a bringing forth. And so I really like that. The other way in which I think about love, and I had to learn this, reasonably recently in my meditative career, is just like a warming up of my awareness. And it can be done, or at least in my case, had to be done in what can feel like artificial ways by just repeating these loving kindness phrases for 10 days at a time on a retreat. And it just puts a little more sunlight and warmth into the system, but it's not like string music. It's just a little bit less of the sort of subtle hidden aversion that was embedded in my mindfulness heretofore.
That's lovely. And really what you're describing is the effect of doing a practice like metta or loving kindness or compassion. There's a whole series of these practices, and you start and they can feel awkward or they can feel mechanical. And what modern neuroscience shows us is that as we practice, these neural connections, these capacities for emotional regulation or connection, or in this case, love and compassion, they actually are rewiring our brains. And we're somehow able to feel a deeper connection, even though it might feel awkward at first. But there's a couple of other things to say, just as that phrase you use from the Tibetans. In the Zen tradition, they say to become enlightened, and I don't even like to use that word because it's like a fancy word, who knows what that means, but this is a beautiful phrase. So to be enlightened is to become intimate with all things, to let yourself feel that very deep connection. And there's the only public monument that I know in the US to a mystical experience is downtown Louisville, Kentucky, on the corner of Walnut and 4th Street, where the great Christian mystic Thomas Merton was walking one day. He'd gotten out of his monastery in the hills there. And he described walking down the street and suddenly being struck by the secret beauty behind the eyes of every walking person there. He said, there I was in my monastery looking for holiness, and it was walking by me in every being, in every face, a beauty that was born into them, no matter what personality and body and politics they had. Underneath, behind those eyes, was something shining, and I had missed it. And now I realize that it's everywhere. And just to be really practical, because we're also in these very divided political times, this really speaks to seeing people in a different way.
Since the riot at the Capitol, we've gotten a lot of questions here on the show about how do you generate compassion for people with whom you disagree. And if it's okay, I'd like to play you a voicemail from somebody who actually lives in Washington that runs along these lines.
Yes, please do.
Hi, this is the DC caller again. Actually, I'm sure you've gotten a number of phone calls from people in DC. Here's my other question for you. How are you supposed to fill our hearts with compassion and kindness when it is just filled with so much anger and vengeance? Like I genuinely want the massless people to get the coronavirus at the Capitol today. That is a horrible thought, and yet it is true. I don't understand how we are supposed to react with compassion.
So you're tossing me that question, huh?
I figured better for you to answer it than me.
Yeah, no, I love her honesty. There's something so straightforward about it. Seeing all these people without masks and wishing that they would get the virus. There's some part of us, the more primitive part, that also revels in revenge in some way. And I've seen this even great spiritual teachers. This spiritual teacher I knew who had just broken up, been really betrayed by their partner in some terrible way and broken up. And they were trying to be loving and kind and all of that, but it was really a terrible story. And I remember looking at them and saying, I said, I know you're going through a hard time. Have you considered revenge? And this huge smile came across their face because they had, but of course, and I wasn't suggesting that they do it, but what I was suggesting is that in some way that when our heart opens, we actually have to feel all the things that come. And all of the things that she spoke about come actually because she feels fear and she feels pain. How could this happen? She's worried. She feels hurt that these people are hurting, whether it's hurting the democracy or hurting one another or hurting the community. And so a response out of that is anger. You know, how dare you? And I'm not saying anger doesn't have its place, but underneath the anger, she's angry actually because she cares. And that's the deepest truth, that she actually cares so much. And all these emotions come from that. The point isn't then to be loving and say, oh, compassionate for them, although you might be. The Dalai Lama said, your enemies, they are your best teachers. They show you how to learn real compassion and patience. But I think that that's a very advanced perspective. I think for the woman who called in, and I respect her honesty, the first step is simply to not hate these people. It's not to love them or not have compassion, but to realize that you don't want to carry revenge and hatred because it poisons your heart. That if you go through the day hating this person and hating that group, you know, and wanting revenge and so forth, if you actually live there, if you know, they don't come as visitors, but you invite them in the table and make them a meal and so forth, it's toxic. You know, it poisons you in some way. So the word actually is non-hatred. It's to step out of that place and realize I can witness this. I see the tragedy of it, that these people are so caught up in their beliefs and in their emotions of anger and fear and so forth, that they're willing to hurt other people out of their bitterness and out of their ignorance and confusion. You see it. And really what you're seeing is ignorance and delusion. This is what Ajahn Chah said, you know, the real culprit is ignorance itself. And that's where it leads to some tenderness of the heart, to see that it doesn't mean you accept it or approve it in any way. In fact, you can say, I will stand up and do whatever I can to prevent this harm from continuing. Whether it's in the pandemic, I'll do what I can to make sure that masks aren't politicized and people actually realize that we are responsible for each other's lives, whatever way I can, or politically. But I also will not contribute to the hatred. I'll say this is ignorance and pain. I see it for what it is. And who I am is better and bigger than that. Who I am, you know, has a certain dignity and nobility, and this is what I want to be and carry into the world. And we can't fix it all, but it gets fixed by each person mending the places that they can touch with their life. So love is so mysterious, you know. We long for it. We live for it in a lot of ways. And to live from that place, to find it in ourselves and wish well. And wish well doesn't mean, I mean, I can do that for anybody. I can picture the worst dictator in the world, people who are causing suffering, and I can wish in my loving kindness practice, may you find peace in your heart. May you live with greater compassion for yourself and others. I can wish that for anybody. And if enough of us live in that way, we really start to affect all.
Just love how we end that with something we can say, even for people we would, in other contexts, hate or want not to be on this earth, if they were to have peace in their heart, and if they live with greater compassion for themselves and others, they wouldn't be doing the things that they're doing that are so harmful. So we'll go into a meditation beyond this theme. It'll be about 20 minutes, maybe a tiny bit less. And if you just want to make yourself comfortable, and you can have your video off if you like, and when we go into small groups, of course, you want to have it back on. And just letting yourself be how you are right now. All the things that are going on in your life, they're still going on, but right now you're just sitting or laying, however it is you're positioned right now. Feeling the support you've got from the chair or the floor or the couch. Letting your body give you the sensations that you're having. Also reaching out to these parts of yourself, parts of your body you normally don't pay much attention to, your feet, your legs, body skin right now. You're ready, letting your awareness come to breath, wherever it is you feel it most vividly. Just in terms of the actual physical sensations you're feeling. Your body's letting you know how the breath is going rather than you having to direct it. To your throat or your nostrils, wherever it's most vivid for you. Each breath as it comes in. Breath as it goes out. Seeing if you can maintain awareness of the whole cycle of breath through an in-breath, in the place where it stops between, and goes to an out-breath. If you find yourself wandering to some thought about something else or analyzing what's going on or thinking about the past or the future or something that's going on in your life, we're not blocking those out. That's part of the meditation. We're just not spending a long time there. Just notice that's happened. You take note of it and coming back to sensations of breathing. It's a very gentle process. That's the way we teach mindfulness here. It's not a jerk back because you were someplace wrong. Every place is right in this kind of meditation. And now you're just noticing your mind has wandered, coming back to breath. And as you sit there, seeing if you might be able to recall a time in your life when there's someone you had strong negative feelings about, someone you didn't like or someone you had issues with, learn something about them that changed your feelings dramatically. You saw them in a kinder light, some piece of their history of their background somehow. This could be recent or sometime in the past. Maybe a coworker who had irritated you or a neighbor who you didn't get along with until you knew something about them, or even a public figure when you understood more about their life. Discovering this fact or a little bit of understanding about the history changed how you thought of them. A bit better, where there's how they could be so disagreeable or do things that were so harmful. noticing how the shift happened in you when you found out this piece of information about them. Or you might recall it from the other side, a time when somebody you didn't expect to be kind to you was, and they did something unexpectedly kind. So maybe somebody who didn't know you well, or somebody you didn't think had positive feelings about you, or somebody who was important to you said something kind and encouraging to you. It could be a neighbor or a friend or family member or a mentor or a teacher who saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself. Could even be something as simple as someone picking up something you dropped or opening a door for you or a warm smile you didn't expect. Some surprising understanding from somebody who you didn't think really understood you very well. As you reflect, noticing how quickly your attitude towards somebody or something can change depending on information that you've gotten or things that have recently happened. Understanding this happens not only in us, but in other people. Emotions and feelings and actions, thoughts can change pretty quickly and dramatically, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just what's happened in response to life around us. In the next 7 or 8 minutes will be a silent meditation, and you can continue on with this theme or make it a breath meditation or whatever kind of meditation or time with yourself that you'd like it to be. So the next 7 minutes will be yours, and we'll end it with a bell.